Trump and Biden are supposed to be visiting the border today, I read, and I just wanted to know what are your thoughts on what's going on with the border?
Well, this is a crisis on the southern border created by Joe Biden. You have to remember that Joe Biden, on the first day he was sworn into office, reversed policies through executive action that were working, policies President Trump put in place that were helping secure the southern border. He stopped the border wall construction. He eliminated the Remain in Mexico policy that was having a huge effect of controlling the chaos on the southern border. The reason Joe Biden is going to the southern border is not because he wants to solve the border problem. He's trying to solve his political problem. This has now become the #1 issue for the American people. This is no longer an immigration debate. This is a national security crisis where we have known terrorists coming across the southern border. So I'm not confident that Joe Biden will do anything but have a photo op. If he wanted to solve the problem, he should stay in his office in Washington, D.C. and sign orders that would stop the chaos going on at the southern border.
And then I was also curious, what are your thoughts on the recent spending bill, which I believe is in the House today?
Yeah. Well, look, the budgeting and spending process in D.C. is broken. We're now some $35 trillion in debt. It's been 27 years. You've got to go back to 1997 since the last time that Congress passed all of their budget bills prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year. Look, what we need to do is hold Congress accountable. What I've proposed, rather than threatening a government shutdown, why don't we shut down the pay of members of Congress, suspend their travel, make them stay in D.C. with no pay until they actually pass the budgets? That's the accountability needed here in Washington to fix a problem that's been festering now for 27 years.
Is You'll have to excuse my ignorance. Is that a real problem? Not people in Congress not staying there and locking down and solving a problem.
It is. There's no accountability. Congress gets away with passing these CRs and so forth, these temporary funding bridges. Look, I spent 28 years in the private sector. When you're in business, you've got to get your budgets prepared and ready prior to the beginning of your next fiscal year. Only Congress gets away with not doing that. Put the accountability back on Congress. Suspend their pay, suspend their travel until they get it fixed.
Now, I read an article about you and the GOP, and basically you laid out the strategy going into 2024, and you said it's about finding candidates that can win both primaries and general elections. Explain that to me.
Yeah, well, politics is about addition, not subtraction. It's about multiplication, not division. And so ultimately, if somebody wants to make policy, they've got to be able to win an election. We need to find candidates. I think about Ronald Reagan's a great example of that, a principled conservative leader who also had an appeal across independents, was able to expand his appeal beyond just the Republican base. And that's what we're looking for in candidates, that can not just win a primary election, but general elections. Because in a general election, they're oftentimes decided by independent voters, finding conservative candidates who have an appeal, like Ronald Reagan did across independent voters. I always loved what Ronald Reagan said. He said, "I'm a conservative, but I'm not angry about it." He had that winsome, friendly, upbeat optimism that made him a very effective leader.
Now, is it is it fair to say that you all really tried to reduce the amount of infighting between Republicans? You're trying to just put all that stock into the people that can win primaries and general elections.
Well, that's what we're pleased to see in Montana. Very pleased to see that Matt Rosendale has endorsed Tim Sheehy in his bid for the United States Senate, and Tim Sheehy is supporting Matt Rosendale in his bid for re-election in the U.S. House. I'm supporting Matt Rosendale for his House race. I'm supporting Tim Sheehy for his U.S. Senate race. There's an example of Republicans coming together, uniting, going forward, because again, this is about addition, not subtraction. We're unified going forward in November, and that's very important here for the outcome that we're going to see this fall in the elections.
Did you directly talk to Rosendale about running for his U.S. House seat?
I did, yeah. I had a thoughtful conversation with Matt Rosendale when he decided to suspend his bid for the United States Senate. He was getting a lot of urging from many to run for re-election for his U.S. House seat. Matt came and told me that he planned to do that. I said, Matt, I support you in that endeavor. President Trump is supporting Matt Rosendale for running for re-election for that House seat. President Trump supporting Tim Sheehy running for the United States Senate. Tim Sheehy is going to be a great U.S. Senator for Montana.
Let's talk about Mitch McConnell. Any response to him announcing that he's going to step down?
Well, I think that caught a lot of us by surprise yesterday. But I think about Leader McConnell, the legacy that he has in terms of transforming the courts, the Supreme Court, circuit courts. You know, a couple of hundred plus lifetime nominations to the federal bench is part of his important legacy. He also was instrumental in getting the Trump tax cuts passed back in 2017 that were absolutely a key part of the roaring economy we had back several years ago until Joe Biden took office. So he's a statesman, he's a gentleman, and I'm grateful for his service to our country as the longest leader in the history of the United States Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sorry for the video just stopped working. I was curious. Everyone's talking about the three Johns expected to vie for his job, but I also saw your name come up as a possible successor. Is that something you're considering?
Well, my number one priority and focus is to serve the people of Montana. That's who elected me to do this job. That's my highest priority. I'm also working to ensure we get the majority in the United States Senate in the November election, and that's why the election in Montana is so important. If Tim Sheehy is elected to the United States Senate, we will control the majority in the United States Senate. Montana will decide the future of the majority, which has profound consequences for the Supreme Court, for circuit courts, for cabinet nominations, for tax policy. It's very significant, and Montanans will play a very important role from a national viewpoint around who we send back to Washington, and I hope that's Tim Sheehy. He'll be a great U.S. Senator.
Now, another thing that I was reading up on was, millions of advertising dollars are coming into Montana for this election, but I expect to have more money to influence voters. Are you concerned at all with that resource gap?
Well, I am. I'm concerned by the fact that the Democrats and Chuck Schumer are massively outspending Republicans in Montana. This is dark money coming from Chuck Schumer supporting John Tester. And so this is a real concern. They've been spending on commercials, as Montanans have been seeing, going back to November. This is unprecedented outside spending. And I will just tell you, look at the numbers. The Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer and his dark money, are massively outspending Republicans right now in Montana. But we'll have a chance to get our message out as we get close to the election to paint the real contrast between John Tester's voting record, having voted with Joe Biden 95% of the time. If you look at John's voting record and my voting record, we vote on opposite sides on virtually every significant vote in the United States Senate. I think right now Schumer and Tester are trying to blur that. I think the facts will be different once they are shown to the people of Montana, and that will make this choice very clear going into November.